So today we are going to talk about microservices, modular monolith applications, and these things are, I think, very trendy among the .NET developers. That's why I will keep my part a little bit shorter than usual. First, I want to tell you about what's going on in ABP articles and videos. Recently, I write an article about ABP's background jobs and background workers because I see some people confusing these terms in terms of how they work, when should we use which. That's why I wanted to clarify. You can scan this QR code or go to the link below by typing. We have Liming Ma. He is written an article about ABP's new unit test structure. We have migrated from our legacy unit test structure to the new one. So you may be interested in if you are writing in the new template unit tests. And AI, nowadays, it's becoming more and more trendy every day. Berkan has written an article about how to use OpenAI APIs with ABP framework. Actually, it's not very hard to use in ABP framework like normal as you use in a normal ASP.NET Core project. But he's showing a showcase about this. And lastly, I want to tell you about NDC London. We are going to participate as one of the sponsors in London, and very important guys coming to the conference speakers. And if you are in London or if you are going to attend this conference, we would like to talk with you, listen to you, and share ideas. We will also talk about ABP and explain what we do with ABP framework. And that's all from me. Now, let's switch to the main topic.
Thank you, Alper, for the introduction part. Welcome, everybody, again. Now, today's topic is interesting because everywhere there are many developers talking about this kind of architectures. Software architectures is very important. When you start a new project, it's very important to decide which type of structure you will start with your solution. So in the future, you don't need to change your structure. You can scale easily and so on. ABP platform's main goal, maybe from the beginning, was to provide some architectural opinions and architectural structures to developers, like some pre-architected solutions. So they don't need to learn all these best practices, and they don't give wrong decisions that will be very big problems in the future of their projects. However, still, there is no solution structure best for everyone. So it depends on your team size, it depends on your company culture, it depends on your project size, and so on. So we are providing three major architectural options with the ABP framework. Not three, four. I will come the other one later. But the main structures are layered architecture, modular, monolith structure, or microservice solution. Now today I will start with a presentation to explain what are the difference of these architectures and what ABP provides to you to get started with the structures. Okay, let's start with ABP Startup Template, template system. So ABP Startup Template system is to provide you complete, production-ready, pre-architected, well-structured solution structure, so you know where to write your application code, how to continue and grow your solution. It also provides many useful library integration out of the box. They are configured for development and production environment. ABP is a modular framework and provides some application modules, and also UI theme is also changeable. These startup templates comes with all these fundamental modules pre-configured for you, so you don't need to install these modules later. And in some license types, it also contains mobile applications or additional web applications that is well integrated to your solution. All the startup templates provide different database and UI options based on your team expertise and so on. And it's production ready. That means when you create a new solution, after a few small change, you can just go production because all the security things, scalability things taught for you. So it's best to start with ABP Startup Template. I think it's not something comparable with ASP.NET Core's standard file new project style projects. Not only ABP provides startup templates for you, because every startup template is not empty. As I said, they are pre-architected for you. So it's best to provide some documentation for better understanding the solution structure. And for each startup template, ABP provides a getting started guide, so you can easily understand how to create a new solution based on your preference, how to run this solution, and how to get started. Then how to create an end-to-end application step by step, so you understand the fundamental points of this development style. And finally, for all the details, we all provide solution structure documents, which are very important, because not only making some predefined development is enough. You may need to understand how all this structure is designed, which design decisions are made for you, how the ABP framework and other libraries are configured for you. So these solution structure documents are very essential when you need a reference. So I will show you how to find these documents. When you go to the ABP website, here we can find the documentation. You see in the Get Started page, we have single layer, layered, microservice, getting started guide. So when you click the layered, you can select different UI or database provider. And this document step by step explains how to create a new project with the layered structure. Then after creating your project, you can learn how to develop some applications step by step on this startup point. So it includes everything, like multiple entities related to each other. It includes authorization, localization, user interface development. There are 10 parts of 10-part tutorial. And also there are other tutorials like modular monolith application development or microservice solution development. So second step is this tutorials. The third step, you want to better understand the solution structure. You go to the solution templates section here. And for example, when you click the layered solution, you see it all explains how database configured for this solution, how you can find your connection string, how to change it, how to make additional configuration, what are the main components of this solution, how even like multi-tenancy or course configured for you. So this three document structure is a very fundamental, provides all the fundamental documents. You understand the solution structure and continue to your development. Okay. We have 3 startup templates, but also supports 4 different architecture. The first architecture can be considered as no architecture, actually. It's like a single project, a non-layered monolith application. It's very similar to ASP.NET Core Startup Template, but more production ready and more development ready. The second option is layered monolith application. The third option is modular monolith application. There is no startup template like modular monolith, but you start with single layer or unlayered application. You add modules on the ABP Studio and you create your modular monolith application. ABP Studio itself is a modular application development platform. And finally, we have microservice solution as a startup template. Let's investigate the solution structure and differences so we can understand when we create applications based on these startup templates, what type of structure we will have and how we will develop our applications. Single layer monolith application is the most simple startup template. Typically, only one or .NET project is included in the solution. If it's an MVC application, for example, it will be only one. If it's a WebAssembly Blazor application, for example, it will have 2 applications or maybe 3 projects, depending on your preferences. We suggest to organize your code by folders because there is only one project and you only have option to organize your code base based on namespace and folders like data, entities, services, page, and so on. So when you can start with this solution template, we think if your project is very small and especially if it's a temporary project, I mean, you will maybe throw away this solution. You are creating an MVP application or just an advertisement company. You just remove this project later. So in this kind of cases, you may start with this project template. Of course, if you have single developer, like you are the only one, or just a few developers, and these developers are not so experienced on software architecture, and they may find the layered architecture a little bit complicated, you can start with the single layer monolith application. To do that, we provide ABP Studio to get started with the ABP framework as a recommended approach. To get started, on the home page, you can go to Get Started page, download ABP Studio for your operating system. It currently supports Windows or Mac, and Linux will be supported in the future. Okay, in ABP Studio, we can just create a new solution, select the, let me change my, okay, I'm switching to a community user account. So all these startup templates are free and available to all the community here. Okay, here we can select the application single layer startup template. I can name it as no layer app. Continue with the UI selection. I will select MVC UI, but you can select based on your preferences. As database provider, we can select Entity Framework Core or MongoDB. It will create the seed the database for us. We can select SQL Server or other database management system. So you see there is a connection string here. We can test, okay, it succeeds. There is a server running here. We can continue safely. We can enable or disable multi-tenancy, select the UI theme, and I will include a sample CRUD page. This is a good functionality. When you select this, a book entity and a CRUD page will be available in the application. So you can take it as an example for your application code. Let's create the solution. Okay, after creating the solution, let's open it with the Visual Studio, for example. ABP Studio is not for coding editor. It's just architectural and like a side tool for your development. for writing your application code, you need to use Visual Studio Code, Rider, or whatever you want. I will use Visual Studio here. Okay, here you see only there is a single project. In the entities folder, you can place your entities, but you don't have to. I mean, you can just place your entity anywhere in the solution. Of course, ABP doesn't force you. However, in the entities folder, you can have a book entity, for example, here it's coming from the sample application. Services can be here, book application service. It provides a good example, so you can just create new entities, just copy paste and change this code based on your application requirements. You know, you can define your permissions, you can localize your applications, for example, to Turkish or Chinese and so on. Just structure is simple, easy to understand. There is no much structure. If you run the application here with ABP Solution Runner, you know, you can just run the application by just clicking here. When you see this icon, it means ABP Studio is connected to your application, and you can browse, you can get all the HTTP requests inside your solution. You can find distributed events, see all exceptions and logs. So it's kind of unified platform to run and debug, trace your applications. Let's log in the application. You see, we just have tenant management page, role management page. You can just grant permissions to any role. For example, book management page has some roles like editing the books, deleting the books, and so on. Here we have book page as an example page in your solution. If you don't select the example page, of course, this will be empty, but for learning purposes, it's very useful, and so on. So this single layer solution template was like that. Let's continue with the next one. The next one is layered monolith application. Here we have many projects. This solution structure contains many .NET projects in the solution. The layers are determined based on DDD principles first, like, you know, application layer, presentation layer, domain layer, some kind of infrastructure layer. We also separated HTTP API layer from the user interface because it's API purpose, it's UI purpose. And also we included the DB migrator application. This can be used to create the database. Just run it and it creates the database or migrate. And we also added some more useful projects here, like, for example, your application services here, but application service interface in the contracts package. So you can share your contracts with clients without sharing your implementation details, and so on. It also includes test projects for each layer. If you have a larger application code base and like your application will be more complex and you want to maintain your solution in the long term, and you have at least a team of developers, maybe 5, 6 developers working on the same solution. Maybe some of them are experienced on user interface development. Some of them will be working on your domain layer. So this layered monolith application startup templates is ideal point to get started with in these cases, especially if your application will have mobile application or some kind of additional web applications, some kind of services in the future. You may think that it can be possible. It's best to start with a layered application startup template. In this way, you can easily share your different application code and share the same domain for all applications. Okay, let's make a quick demo for that too. I'm closing the solution. And okay, just create a new solution. Here, now I want to switch to my, other account, because I want to show the application startup template with pro features in this case. When we select the application layered startup template, we can still name it as a layered app. Same UI options are here. Actually, the final application will be very similar, but the solution structure is different mainly. Just I will continue next. Okay, in this case, we can select mobile application like MyUI or React Native that is integrated to the solution. So if you will have a mobile application, it's a good option to create it. We can add some optional modules like GDPR module, language management, maybe some kind of chat application into our solution. And again, we can add a sample CRUD page here. Okay, now it created, we see there are many projects here. We can open it in Visual Studio again. Okay, now you see many projects here. In the domain layer, we have entities like a book entity derived from the aggregate root base class, or in the application layer, we have book application service. You see the same application code actually, and in the contracts package, it defines an interface for the book application service, also defines the data transfer object it's using, and so on. So the general placement is like that: domain layer, application layer, web layer, and so on. Okay, if we run the application, it will be similar, but this time I selected Pro Startup Template, so UI will be a little different and with more modules. However, the development experience is completely the same. Okay, we see that we still have a books page. We can create books. We have some administration page. This has, of course, more features like audit logs, like language management. You can add new language, localize on the fly, and so on. So you can just create new role, set permissions for each role, and so on. Okay, the application was very similar. Let's continue from the third architecture. Is Monolith modular application structure. Here, if you want to build a modular monolith application, you can start with single layer application template or n-layered application template. For single layer, if you will not write some code to your umbrella application, that means the main application, and you will write all your code into modules, then your main application can be very simple. Just configure some dependencies and so on. So you can just start with the single layer in this case. You can, after creating one of the solutions, you can easily install ABP's pre-built modules, create new modules, establish some relations between modules. So you just architect your solution on the ABP Studio. For example, if you have 10 modules, you just create these 10 modules, create relations between them. And finally, after determine your architecture, you just go to the coding part and develop your solution. For modular monolith systems, we advise to get started with modular monolith when you have very complex domain, and also especially if your domain is easy to divide subdomains. So you can just create bounded context on this domain. If you have multiple teams, each team may be expertised on a particular module. This is also an ideal case. If you have very small team, it will be very overhead for you. But if you have a big team or multiple teams, then this modular monolith system will be much easier to get started with and also more maintainable. And finally, of course, if you want to consider to migrate to microservice system later, it's very common advice to get started with modular monolith application. So you can just start with this approach and continue to microservices later, because ABP's old structure provides guidance and best practices to implement this. And of course, when you have a modular monolith application, if your modules have separate databases, it's also possible to scale these databases independently. So it brings some significant scalability of microservices to modular applications. As a demonstration, I will not make a big demo here. I will just show you the ABP samples modular CRM solution.
While you are opening, maybe I can show some different topics about Reddit, if it's long.
I think I finished this then before. Maybe I also finish microservices, because I think it remains less Alper. Maybe it's best to finish. I understand your case, but I'm about to finish. Maybe last 5 or 10 minutes maximum. Okay. Okay, here you see the solution. Okay, with different modules. Every module have its .NET solution and its own structure. For example, I can open the ordering module in Visual Studio. And I see only order entities, order application service, and so on. If I open catalog module, I see catalog related functionality. So there is an example in the ABP platform, and also you can, I think you can use the modular monolith application tutorial here. It just describes how to build this example solution for you. Okay, let's be quick and finalize with the microservice solution. Okay, finally, we provide a microservice solution. But since we think microservice is some kind of enterprise level feature, we are providing this with the ABP business license. Here we have many applications, many services, infrastructure components like event bus, cache system, and authentication service. Actually, whatever you expect from a complicated microservice solution becomes comes with pre-configured and working for you, even configured for Kubernetes and so on. If you have still complex domain with subdomains, and still you have multiple teams, very similar to modular monolith advice, but this time you want to deploy or scale services, applications, or in databases individually and independently from each other, this can be the approach you may want to go. And also, if you want to use multiple technology stacks, that means one service can be .NET, another service can be Java or Python, and so on. So this is also the way you should go in this case. And if you want to create high available and fault tolerant system, microservice can provide this. But you need to have a good DevOps culture, because the deployment and runtime, monitoring, tracing, all these kind of things will be complicated compared to monolith, modular, or other architectures. Here, I will not show any code, but just open the one microservice solution again. Okay. I don't know if there is. Okay, this is an example microservice solution. You see, we have many 4 applications. For each application type, we have gateways, and finally, we have many services. Some of these services are infrastructure-style services, like administration service. Some of them are coming from the ABP's modules, like identity, GDPR, and so on. And some of them are just added by the tutorial. We have a microservice development tutorial, so you can just follow this tutorial and create the solution for your site. Okay, finally, to summarize what I have explained, we have 4 fundamental architectural offering. If you have small temporary project and a few or single developer, you can get started with the single layer application template. If you have a middle size and long-term project, you have a team of developers working on different layers of the application, and you will maybe have multiple applications in the future, then layered architecture is good to go. If you have very complex domain, that is easy to divide subdomains, and multiple teams are working on this same solution. In this way, if you go with the modular monolith solution, your source code will be scalable. What I mean is that, if you have a single and 1 unit code base and think that 20 developers working on the same code base, it will be very easy to have conflicts and not easy to work with this kind of application. So this can scale your development time. And also, if you have multiple databases on for each module, then you can scale also your databases. For microservices, the first 3 items are similar because actually these are different. These are similar in development time, but different in deployment time, basically. When you have a DevOps culture and you have a good budget, and you want a scalable, not only code base, only runtime scalability, like scaling in the individual services. In these cases, and you want this kind of things, I explained it lastly, you can go with microservices. It's hard to tell, but to give you an idea, maybe I suppose 5 or 10% of all projects are suitable for single layer, so it's not very common, I think. Layered architecture, I think, is best for most of the projects. Maybe 50% projects is suitable for this kind of layered architecture. It's enough to scale, and it's enough to enough complexity. For modular monolith solutions, I suppose maybe 20% or maximum 30% is suitable for creating modular monolith, because not most of the systems are that complex. For microservice, I think it is similar to single layer, maybe 5 or 10%, or all projects in the world may be suitable for microservices. Okay, lastly, we have created a template selection guide. You can scan this QR code, and it explains which startup template is proper for you. Actually, it's a summary and actually more detailed of this presentation. Also, lastly, we have created a document about modular monolith architecture with .NET. It's kind of white paper and describes what is monolith modular architecture, what are the challenges of such a solution, what are the design decisions you need to make while creating this kind of solution. So very detailed documentation to get all the fundamental points of a modular monolith.
Ali, can you show which menu item do they need to
Okay, I will show. Here from the main page, you can come to features page, framework features. Here you see 4 fundamental architectures supported by the ABP framework. For all of them, we will write this kind of white papers. Here only for we have only for the modular architecture. When we click here, you can find this documentation. I believe this is a very essential guide for who wants to start with the monolith modular architecture. And if you get started with monolith first, then you want to go to microservice later, you need to design your monolith first well and compatible for microservice migration later. It's very important. If you just forget about microservice and focus on the monolith, then it will not be easy to convert to microservices later. But I have created a YouTube video for that. It's just 1 hour video and explains all the details you should care about while creating your monolith application, monolith modular application, if you want to convert to microservices later. Thank you for listening to me. It will be maybe it was a little long than I was expecting. It was half an hour. Now, Alper, we can continue with with your questions.
I'm going to share some topics from different ideas and different topics from Reddit and social media. I gathered some radical ideas and questions what people ask in social media. So let's discuss these topics. Also, Omkar, Kirti, you can share your ideas. So first, this is not question, but there is this guy in Reddit. He's telling to decide which architecture you need to start with. First, ask these questions. How many people can support it? Like how many architects and application developers are available in your team? Halil also mentioned about this. How fast does it be to change? Where does the business need fall on the cap spectrum? What are the business models? How much can we spend, and how fast do we need it? So, do you agree with these topics, Omkar? What would you like to say about this?
Yeah,
Deciding architecture.
yeah, absolutely. And but there's one more thing that I often see customers or end users asking us for. They want to create their own module, just like chat or content management or file management. And they believe that they typically don't going ahead with monolith modular. They start adding that into their application directly, and later they realize, oh, they want to make it more like a modular monolith. So that is something which is usually not covered as part of the question. So that is some reusability is something that I want to highlight, and that can be made part of this question also. But yeah, so usually when someone starts, they have an objective, either proof of concept or an MVP or a pilot, and that decides type of solution template that they should pick based on architecture. And if they are ready to let go what they have done during, let's say, single layer architecture, then that is the best fit for a POC, which is not going to be repurposed later. But they believe that they want to carry forward the development of it. I believe then a mix and match of layered solution template and monolith modular might be a good choice, because they can repurpose it later. Speed is definitely important, because if you are trying to develop something quick and something for which you want to get some business buying, then you don't want to spend entire SDLC going through microservices. Is definitely not a good choice in case speed is your concern for getting business buying. I would pick single layer anytime, is in case I want to go ahead and talk to business for getting an approval in place, and then later on decide which architecture is suitable for us. Kirti?
Kirti, do you want to add anything for this topic?
Yes, I think I agree with Omkar. And to me, I think its speed is most important if we are at the beginning stage of the project, or if we have not started with the project. Because if there is something that I want to prove the feasibility, I could definitely get started with the ABP platform, but with a very minimalistic single layered application, and I can just work on proving the feasibility and create the proof of concept. Once it works, then we have a choice of either going with the application, the layered architecture, or a modular monolith or microservices. But yes, definitely. And what we have observed is we have internally at Y we have used single layered application for POCs, and also we have developed an internal tool, that is for capturing defects in a web application. So it's a React based plugin, but we need a parent app. So we can either use a application or a single layered application as a parent application, ready it for demo quickly so that we can demonstrate that functionality.
Yes, when it
And on
reaches
top of
to,
it, sorry, on top
Yeah,
of it, use of ABP Studio and ABP Suite is very important because that gives you immense capabilities as you go on. So, the combination of all these factors can really give you good speed for development. And you can't overlook use of ABP Suite and ABP Studio nowadays.
correct.
okay. So when it reaches to a very big scale application, yes, maybe that time we can decide to split this monolithic application, maybe to modular monolith or uh, big microservice architecture. And uh, one of the examples showing from Shopify. Shopify is I think, the most largest code base that runs on Ruby on Rails. And in this example, their engineers writing the adventure of Shopify's going to modular monolithic application structure, not for not to the microservice system. So interestingly, even big uh, companies do this. Also, Amazon returned to Amazon Prime Video. They switched to monolith from microservices. Maybe because of expenses, costs, or uh, using the team effectively, they somehow switched to the monolith layer. And this is another question. Maybe anyone who wants to answer, from a Reddit user. Are modular monoliths just where pub sub queues are used instead of calling NuGet class methods directly, as known as loosely coupling? It's a simple question, actually.
For me, it's not simple. I didn't understand.
Yeah,
So
it is.
he's asking, modular monoliths is like this application where pub sub queues are used instead
Like
of
messaging.
calling NuGet. Yes.
They say instead of NuGet, what is the
Calling
relation with
NuGet
NuGet? I
class,
don't understand.
he's using functions in another binary.
Anyway, function or function call or like method call or messaging. I think both can be used in modular monolith, not only messaging. So it's not true.
Okay. It's not a question. It's also a saying from a Reddit user. He's telling about microservices. He doesn't like microservices. Maybe he's also downrated for this for this saying. Microservices are anti-pattern. The design is pushed to maximize the extraction of money from you to the service provider. So he thinks we
Cloud
created
providers.
microservice environments for Azure, Amazon WS.
Well, well, that might be true to some extent because that depends on nature. For example, Uber runs their business on microservices for their riders and for the bookings, for payments. They have different microservices, and because of their nature of business, and they can afford to have those many different scalable microservices in place, and they want to be highly available, fault tolerant as well. But if you look at smaller application, they might they want to aspire to become microservice because they believe at some point later they will require that type of scalability. But if you try to bake that right from the beginning, when your user base is small, when you have a low budget, when you have tight timeline, then definitely microservices is not a suitable way to go. And that is where it's more of a aspiration base. So they want to go that route, but they can't afford to go that route right away. So I believe that might be a frustration from this side.
Actually, last paragraph is also a little bit correct. He says you cannot release a sub-service independently because most of the time your interfaces are changing, signature of calling is changing, and if you didn't touch these transportation code, yes, you can independently publish your single service. But if you are changing something that maybe changes in other microservices, he says, where is the point of making microservices? What do you think?
I think maybe in this point he misunderstood because in microservices you should always develop your services backward compatible.
Also,
not only bug fixes, even if you provide major releases and some of the old APIs or still use it, you should not remove them. You should make it obsolete. You can create new API versioning and so on. So there are some disciplines you should follow. Of course, it's hard, and they want to have microservices, but they don't want to pay for microservices. Like
yes,
right.
This is because these comments. Okay, you can continue.
He's one of the Microsoft MVP, and he has a very good article about modular monoliths. So he says, I'm summarizing, microservices gained popularity for their modularity and scalability, but they often introduce significant complexity and challenges, especially in messaging and maintenance, which can hinder rapid development and MVP delivery. A modular monolith approach combines the benefits of monoliths and microservices. So it's like a hybrid solution, he says, by organizing code into distinct modules within a single system, reducing plumbing complexity while retaining scalability and separation of concerns as the system evolves. I think he is summarizing all these different ideas, and I agree with Hexmaster. Do you want to say anything about this?
Absolutely. I mean, when I look at a couple of customers that we have dealt with, when they have different systems coming into action, oftentimes we start bringing in separate modules in place which are interacting with them independently. Some of it, as you know, we have so many components within ABP stock, ABP frame, ABP IO. We have mobile application, we have website, we have our own solution which is getting to be either B2B or B2C. So all these factors coming into picture, you can really look at this as a well-formed hybrid architecture, which is a combination of different modular services which are running, and then deployment and all these things are your choices. So if you want to scale up a specific one, you can do that quite easily. So I think hybrid is a way to go. Yeah.
As we are developing ABP framework, from the first day we are investing on modular applications first. Of course, we are also supporting microservice scenarios, but we more focused on modular applications. Even all people were talking about when they were talking about microservices. So I think we are in a good point for the ABP framework. For this question, I mostly agree. Monolith modular applications have most of the benefits that microservice system has, and much less cost, development and maintenance cost and DevOps cost. The only reason to move to microservices may be because of technology, using multiple technology stacks and completely independent development and deployment. Other than these purposes, for example, for scalability, I think modular monolith applications are also scalable because, in a real application, the most bottleneck point is database mostly. Like if you separate databases for each module, then you maybe take 80% of scalability in the database level. Just maybe if you separate services, you may gain some more scalability, but you also lose some performance. So it's I think modular monoliths are a good balance for most of the applications.
Yes, I agree too. And
Yeah.
I think the problem is not people not jump into the microservices quickly. They don't know what to do because in the first phase of project, very much things are unknown. So here also mentioning about this topic, doing microservices is hard. You have to have a good plan and idea about how you are going to solve messaging problems, he says, and later microservices should emerge later when you know full well after enough gathered data what should be for example horizontally scaled. And Eric Evans saying the biggest problem with project management is making decisions early in the project life when you know the least about it. So architecting a project is very important in this position. Experience is important in this position because deciding which architecture is a result of experience. So you can make a premature.
Especially after creating a microservice solution, it's very hard to move some functionality from a microservice to other because of you better understand the structure, you better understand which feature should be implemented in which service. So it's very hard. For modular, it's not also easy for modular, to be honest. Like if you created a modular system, then you want to change module boundaries. It's not also easy, but much easier than microservices.
I think there is one clean answer for choosing microservices. You have an application which is running right now, but it's becoming a legacy. And you know what to do because this is the final application. You are migrating this application to a new technology. Then you already know if it suits microservice or not.
Yes.
Other cases, it's very, very hard to decide.
Mostly agree, yes.
I found a good repository about modular monolith with DDD. In this repository, it's a sample application repository. But if you are interested in modular monolith with DDD, it's also one of the most rating repositories in internet. So I will ask you a question. Let's talk about some questions. If any of you want to answer, you can. How does the complexity of managing another one. How does data management differ between modular monolithic and microservices, particularly concerning data consistency and integrity? So we are talking about data management in modular monolith and microservices. Do we need to duplicate data in different services? Or if it's like this, if one record is deleted from one of the services, do we need to delete from other services as well? How do we
how to ensure database level transactions among different services, you mean?
Yes.
Okay, for me, in a perspective, I can say that it depends on, for example, your database structure. If you are creating modular monolith application and decide to go with a single database, it's not very much different from a non-modular application. It's just you have single database, you can just apply database level transactions to ensure data consistency. It's not a very big problem. In microservices, it's very common to split databases. If you go with same approach like splitting databases for modular monolith, you will also face the same problems with microservice architecture, because especially if some of your databases are using different technologies. For example, one of them are MongoDB, another one is SQL Server, another one is Redis. Then it's not easy to it's not possible to create distributed transactions to span all these operations. So you will go with like event quiz and like messaging, and I think they are very similar, not very different, depending on your database architecture. I mean, you can apply same structure for two approaches.
Yeah, and in order to keep high availability of data, oftentimes I have seen in microservices there is a duplicate data being stored, but it is in form which is specific for that microservices. For example, let's say if I have a rider database and if I have a booking for a cab on another microservice, I will have riders database made available to some extent, and even if it is duplicate, I will still maintain some integrity using some messaging technique there. But redundant, repetitive data and making microservices highly available, that requires all these techniques anyways. But yeah, I agree to Ali's viewpoint there.
Also, I can give you a real-world example about this topic. ABP IO, maybe you know, as a support website. And this support website actually a sub-service, like it's standalone being released. So we have a users table actually in the main database, but support service has its own users, like support users, but these are identical users with the main applications users. And even the main application is down, support service still can survive. You can assign questions to different people, search people. And when a new user joins to the ABPIO platform, we feed this support website. So yes, we are duplicating data. It's anti-pattern, but at the same time, we are gaining the performance increase. Also, we can standalone publish the support website. So there are downsides, also advantages about this topic.
Yeah, we have also done data duplication, repeating tables in some cases. I think it's a trade-off between what you want to achieve. If you, of course, there is event-based. If we use RabbitMQ and event-based system, then that eliminates that redundancy to some extent. But I have seen dev teams struggling with this in microservices. I think it's also needs a different mindset. If you decide to go ahead with microservices, you need a boundary separation to be planned out properly. If there is overlap between services and they are not isolated, then you might run into problems. So we need to separate out the boundaries, as you call the bounded context, so that you have least issues later on.
We already start to talk about the second question, the complexity of managing microservices. Boundaries, yes, deciding the limits of the boundaries is problem. We are duplicating data, also making any complexity layer in the application according to the layered architecture. Also, you will make API calls to the other services. Maybe the other services has a different database, like one is MongoDB, another is Microsoft SQL Server. There will be latency when calling these services. You need to call maybe several times to be successful when the network is down. These are, I think, complexity. Do you want to add anything to manage microservices?
Yeah, this is because of these complexities, people leave microservices and return to monolith applications or monolith modular applications. Maybe related to these questions, I want to ask to Omkar about. I know for some of their projects they are using layered solution structure of ABP. So for your developers, it is easy to understand this layered architecture. I know some developers, we are getting some feedbacks about it's a little bit complicated for beginners, and that's why we have created single layer solution structure. But for me, maybe I'm experienced on that. layered solution structure is easy to understand, and when you understand it, your code base will be much more easier to maintain. So what do you think about that? And also, do you think the layered application structure is enough to build complex applications?
Absolutely, it is a very well architected layered solution that we have at this point of time. And the only thing that I strongly believe is once you understand the internal project structure, where your domain resides, where your specific classes can go, I think those things are important. So there might be a little bit of learning curve compared to single layer or no layer. But here with layered architecture, once you understand layer where things should go, it is quite easy for us to develop application. In fact, I would look at it slightly differently. If I see how ABP suite performs or how it generates the CRUD pages, once I see that, then I know where those entities are going to reside. Even I can look at existing code base and identify that, but just to see the code change that is performed by ABP Studio or sorry ABP Suite, it is quite easy for us to see where those classes are going to reside, how they are structured, how they are interconnected. So that way, most of the time I have seen use of ABP suite. If your UI is complex, you can say no UI required and still go ahead and create an API quickly. So that way, most of your stuff is done readily. At the same time, if you have complex structure on business logic on backend, then look at how existing structure is layered. It's very well layered, and I don't think going above and beyond that is required. If I stay within the existing project structure, my conformity to existing ABP standard is almost there. So that is where I would highly advise going through CRUD page generation process and see how new classes are getting added to existing project structure.
Thank you for your answer.
And I have an anecdote about this. So I got some emails about I'm one guy, one developer in the team. I'm going to create a microservice solution. I'm often hear this, and we have a personal license which is lower price than the other plans. So he's starting to develop microservice, but after 2 weeks he says, "I want to refund because it's very hard." It's very hard because you are just riding bicycle before, and now you want to ride a bus, not even car.
Right, right. So that usually happens because everybody is so. To be honest with you, we are all fascinated with technology, and when we see somebody else making use of microservice, we also believe that I want to use microservice because at the end I want to have achieve high scalability and
It's very trendy right now, so everybody wants to go for
use that. But that is
it.
that decision is to be made with all these factors in place. How many team members are there? Do we have complexity involved? Do you really have that type of budget? So those are the things which are important while making a decision, not necessarily fascination for specific type of solution template.
Yes.
I think
Okay, you
this
can continue,
question
Alper.
is answered. What are the key differences between layer and microservices? Scalability and
I think we talked
maintainability.
about that mostly.
What do you think? Do you want to add extra something to this question?
For
Modular
this
monolith.
question, I think we talked mostly for starting completely new ideas. You have an idea, you want to scale. I know you will create new Facebook. I know it's a very big project, but even in this case, it's best to start with modular monolith. Even it's good to start with just layered monolith application because microservices were trending maybe until the last year, and people started to microservice without thinking other like decision points. Now modular monoliths are trending, but don't get in the trap. If it's not suitable for you, if it's too complex for you, you just go with just monolith application, non-modular monolith application. It is still valid and it is still good. And as I explained it in my presentation, I believe at least 50% of the projects can safely go with layered architecture. Okay.
Yes. So this guy is telling the similar sentences. So he tells 95 over 100 companies that think they will need microservices for scale never reaches the scale where microservices would be beneficial to them. And obviously, microservices have benefits, but you really only see them in the top companies, which then propagates survivorship bias. So,
Exactly.
yes, I also agree. And this Reddit guy, he says, I have done both approaches before and trying to make microservices from day one. End up adding so much overhead and complexity. Often a simple container deployment and scaling far outweighs setting up an unnecessary Kubernetes cluster. I would always agree that starting with a monolith with properly decoupled code is the way to go. Start splitting of microservices when you need to define clear isolation, deployment, separate teams. So another experience from a community member.
Okay.
If I want
Maybe
to
Alper, we
share,
can. Sorry.
so I just want to quickly share our experience
Yeah.
of delivering so many ABP projects. The
Yeah,
most
please.
popular framework so far has been the layered monolith, and the layered monolith is very well understood, easy to understand and start developing, and the ABP documentation also supports it. When we used it, we didn't start with ABP suite directly, but we went through the documentation, and it was pretty easy for our team to adopt quickly. I agree that it's an opinionated framework. You cannot. There are certain ways of working because it's a layered architecture. But yes, it's easy to adopt. So I think this person who says the monolith is the way to go. I think yes, monolith, and then if you want to add modularity, you add modules to it. And unless you have a really solid use case of scalability and you're thinking about microservice, till then, I think that modular monolith should handle all complex scenarios as well as scalability.
Okay, Alper, maybe we can continue with community questions from the
Yeah.
YouTube. Then we may return to other questions if we will have time.
Yes, you can bring it on.
Okay, I will bring questions here. One question is, what's the difference between HTTP API and HTTP API client projects, and why do we need that? Good question. There are many SaaS companies. For example, you want to use OpenAI APIs. It's popular in nowadays. Yeah, you want to use AI functionality. OpenAI has a .NET library. You just install this .NET library and use their APIs easily, instead of making raw HTTP API calls, set up like HTTP clients and so on. So this library is actually similar to HTTP API client here. So in your project, HTTP API is where your controllers are implemented. HTTP API client is a library that you can give to your customers. They add to their .NET applications and easily consume your HTTP APIs without dealing with your breaking chains, without dealing low-level things, and so on. So it's very useful. We didn't have to, of course, do that. But if you don't have any client, if you will not use this approach, you can just delete it, but it's very useful. Okay, I will continue with this. Is there an ABP sample application structure as modular monolith? Yes, modular CRM was an example, and in the ABP documentation, if you go to the tutorial section, you will see how it is built from scratch. So it's a good example project. A comment like ABP Studio make microservice so much easier than previous. I definitely agree on that. We spent too much time for making this possible with ABP Studio, but now I think it's very easy. We can easily add new services. Maybe probably in the next ABP community talk will be based on microservice development with the ABP framework. A question related to .NET Aspire integration is available for microservice solution of ABP framework. Now, currently, no, there is no .NET Aspire integration. You can just integrate to your solution after creating your ABP solution. It's possible because it's just a library, you can add and use. And we have already created an article for that on the ABP community website. You can find by searching .NET Aspire. But final answer is when you use ABP Studio, you mostly don't need to .NET Aspire. Maybe you can also check my comparison article about that on the ABP community website. A comment related. First thing I think we need to know, can we define the domain boundaries, then the budget, then the manpower? And he says you should first think about your code, your domain. If you can split your domain into subdomains easily and imagine relations between them and so on. If you cannot do that, just don't go with microservices, because then even if you have budgets, it will be much complex than we were expecting. I mostly agree on that, but if you don't have budget or if you don't have manpower, it's also not impossible to create a big microservice system. It's not something can be developed with single developer. You can do, but not reasonable. Can we add the ABP pyramid modules into .NET non-layered application? We can definitely add. ABP has more than 20, maybe 30 application modules. We have designed all these application modules so they can installable to a monolith application. They can reusable as module in a modular application. They can be used as a microservice in a microservice system. They can just uninstall it, install it. So it's very hard to implement this kind of modules in practical. So to make this possible, we determined many standards, implemented it for every module, tested it well. So ABP's modules are possible to install to non-layered applications or any kind of application. Until after that point, maybe Alper, we can continue with your questions. Then
Okay,
we return to community questions later.
You can find next question, and I will ask this question: what are the best practices for maintaining module boundaries within a modular monolithic architecture to prevent tight coupling? If you have anything to say about this, I want to listen, or I also have an answer for this one.
Maybe you go. I answered too much.
So, first, each module should have a single purpose. Like if it's a support website, support service, there is a limit. You need to decide if it's in the support boundaries. Expose only what's necessary through interfaces. Keep internals private. So don't expose everything to other services. Open what's required. Use dependency injection or abstractions to avoid direct dependencies so that in the future you can replace. Each module owns its data. It's very important. Now it says duplicate data. Share only via APIs. Test modules independently to main boundaries, and prefer event-driven or message-based communication over direct calls. It says don't call directly, so it may fail. Write somewhere some queue, message-based communication. So basically, these are the main.
I can add one thing, maybe. There are two types of communication, like direct API calls and message-based communication. Yes, you may suggest prefer event-driven architecture more, but also API calls are also used. My suggestion and best practice is to use API calls only for read-only purposes, not to make some manipulation on other module. Make manipulations or changes via events. This is the important difference between API calls
We,
and
we will use
event-driven
get
message.
method for API.
Yes, use get messages, get methods. Sorry. So just query purpose or get some data, because in this purpose you can just in the future you can just catch this, get a response. You can even duplicate data in your internal database to reduce duplication or coupling and so on. But if you make changes with API calls, it's not easy, not possible to ensure database level transactions, for example. But if you use messaging and you use outbox and inbox patterns with the ABP framework, you can also ensure database level transactions. Okay, you can continue.
Okay, it's also another interesting question which everyone will deal when they have a microservice. How do layered and microservice architectures handle cross-cutting concerns like security, logging, maybe shared layers like infrastructure or middleware layer? Because
Yeah, if we don't use
how
any
did
kind of framework like ABP framework, it will be maybe very different. But with ABP framework, ABP also provide all these cutting concerns in the framework level. So you just reference this framework NuGet package and it works out of the box. So for ABP projects, almost no difference. In this way, you can, when you move your application code from Monolith to microservice later, then you don't need to change your code because all infrastructure supports both architecture.
maybe for microservices, we can use centralized logging systems, distributed tracing tools like Jagger, or how they pronounce it.
Yeah, definitely, it's possible. It's also possible to use in monolith applications, but in microservices, it's more
Yes,
requirement. It's
actually,
yeah.
for tracing, maybe request.
Yeah, maybe there will be some differences, of course. Yes.
Okay, I will. It's not a question. For monolith code, it's easier to commit. It's easier to track problems since it's not scattered everywhere. Lower latency, easier dependency management. For plus, it's harder to scale. It's harder to for this disadvantage. It's harder to scale, maintain, because you cannot just easily make a change in your cart microservice. It also slows down development time since you have to build the complete application every time. You need to make a little change in a small affecting area. And for microservices, it's easier fault isolation. If there is a problem in one system, it's parallel system working. It will not affect other systems mostly if you do it good. Flexible tech choices, like if one of your system, like you are creating a support system, you can use MongoDB for this system, and for the rest of the application, you can use MySQL or Postgres, and faster, more high frequency deployments. You can deploy single services quickly, faster to production. Also improve developer productivity since they are smaller and more focused. I think he also made a good summarization in these topics. Modular monolith and relationships. I recently started learning modular monolith and I want to migrate and already finished e-commerce app. He has a legacy application, a spaghetti code. I have searched online and I found answers to these questions. I couldn't find answers to these questions. Let's listen and comment on his questions. Most of the entities across all the modules have relationships to the same tables, because in a standard application you can have a address, and in this address you are using countries like language, and in which module these common things need to be placed, where they are belong to. How can other entities make a reference to them? Does he need to use a relationship between these tables, or a foreign key even, when he is making relationship with country, city? Yes, order entity cannot have a navigation property to the user entity. So when querying the orders, I need to get info from other modules, user, product, business info. And he is asking a very good core question about microservices. When you start, you will understand his question.
But I think he's trying to implement microservices or modular monolith with the same
Yes.
approach, building with single database
Yes,
monolith
but
application.
he's in
Of course, it will
in
not
the
work.
first steps, Halil, in the first steps of migrating. That's why asking like this.
Very reasonable questions at the beginning, of course, but I think he should try to understand limitations and respect those limitations and implement it, play game with its own rules. Like he knows play soccer or football and want to use same rules while playing basketball. Of course, it has some other rules. In football, you can easily hit by your foot and it will go very fast. But in basketball, it will not work.
So basically, if he has a reference to the country table, he needs to duplicate this table, or he shouldn't make a foreign key to the other tables. Even he has a relationship with this table, but he needs to maintain and keep the data consistency within the application layer, maybe. So no need to give this responsibility to the database with foreign key.
Yes.
Implement your own
Actually,
data.
it's best to take logic from database to application layer. Okay, let's continue with some community questions, Alper, from YouTube. We develop our application with ABP modular architecture. It's easy to go with the microservice architecture later. I will share my screen. It's an interesting topic because just 1 minute. Okay, here, as I said for a little early, we have created ABP modules, exactly work like that. Same modules works in modular monolith and works with microservice, even without changing single line of code inside the modules. So it's possible. But to make it possible, you should respect some rules. And we have created a documentation under the framework architecture module development best practices. You can find easily by writing best practices. After finding this documentation, it clearly explains how to design your module structure. And ABP's module startup template already implements that. And also how to design your entities, for example, it gives some examples and so on. My voice is returning to me. Can you mute, please, everybody here? Okay, thank you. So it clearly explains how to define your application service, data transfer objects, and so on. So when you implement these rules, it will be much easier to convert to microservices later. Then when you convert to microservices, you will not make change on your application code, but you will make some changes on your deployment code and on your aggregation code. That means some configuration code brings these modules together and so on. Mostly it will be changed, but the module code will not be changed. Stop screen, okay. He says ABP Commercial now has the tool to migrate community projects to commercial. How it is easy and is possible? No. How does it require a lot of work after migration to commercial? What do you say, Alper? You know that, or maybe I can answer if you didn't listen. You are muted.
You can answer this question.
Okay. With ABP Studio, we have created this tool for conversion. It basically makes some configuration changes and replaces all NuGet packages with the commercial ones. When we were designing this NuGet package, we were already thinking about this problem and designed the package based on that. So it may be requiring some work, but it will not too much. So I think it will be easy to convert. And some people here answered about that in the chat also, that they tried and made it easily. Another question from Ruslan is getting the entities from database for suite, generating code. Now we don't support this scenario, Alper. Do you remember?
Yes. I know this scenario, but I think
it was implemented in ASP.NET Zero.
Maybe yes, because I remember this feature.
It was definitely implemented for ASP.NET Zero, but for ABP Suite, I don't remember, to be honest. However, it's not very hard to create entities from database tables.
We have, Halil, we have this feature.
We have?
Yes.
Okay. We may have, okay.
It's creating a CRUD application by connecting to an existing database. But it's not creating all the relationship. Like if you are creating an invoice entity, it will not create product, users, sub-entities. It will create one entity, CRUD entity.
Sorry. Another question is, he says, it will be appropriate to create a new layer for events for dependent modules to use instead of application contracts. So that application contract functions cannot be called from dependent modules. He says, we have an application layer and application contracts layer. When we give application contracts, all the application service interfaces are included here. For our layered architecture, we put domain events to domain.shared project. So it's already possible, Merdan. So if you put to domain service shared package, you can just give this package and they can use your events without accessing to application contracts.
I want to expand my answer with the documentation. ABP Suite has a feature which generates CRUD pages from an existing table. Here you can see it can connect Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQLite, and create your entity.
Okay, great. So it's possible.
Yes.
Burak asked, do you recommend a separate database for each module in a modular monolith system? I recommend if you will migrate to microservices later, because in this way, your solution will be much more similar to microservice architecture, and it will be much easier to convert it later. The second motivation can be scaling your databases individually. Most of the business applications having problems on scalability because of database. All load comes to database. So when you separate databases, you split your load across different databases. So it's also a good advantage. So the question is good, but it depends on your scalability requirement and if you want to migrate to microservices later. Another interesting question comes from Serdar about artificial intelligence will replace all the SaaS business, and instead of creating applications, we will directly work with AI, and AI will work with database, so you don't need to create user interface for your users and so on. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella said that in an interview. I watched that. Thank you, Serdar. I don't know. It's very futuristic thought. Of course, we are thinking about that. We are making meetings, how to make, what to do with the ABP framework about AI and so on. But I don't have something to share now with you. And this forecast, I don't know, this prediction is true or not. I don't know. What do you think, Omkar?
Well, I
Are you
think,
freezing?
yeah, sure. I think he's talking about transforming SaaS application, because now with AI, anyone can write an application with certain prompts and it can happen. But yeah, I think it's still futuristic. Sometimes there are promises made right from the beginning. If Anil and for you being both
Yeah.
programmers,
We cannot
yeah,
know the future actually. This can be also, but 2 years later, 2 years ago, metaverse were changing the world. All applications were being metaverse, and we will live in metaverse. We will
Somebody is
buying
land.
right,
lands from metaverse.
right, right, right.
Predicting future is not easy. Good prediction, but we will see.
But I think if your input for the application is standard, like filling an application form, there is no need to write a prompt for this. It will be much more bringing overhead to the user. So
For
you
me,
write
a form is easier to fill compared
yes.
to writing everything manually.
But
So
I agree, Satya, in terms of reporting, because reporting is very dynamic. Yes, you are creating some standard reports, but many times I want to ask report if last year's product sales same as the year before, something like this, like dynamic. It can be a good idea, but for standard input outputs, AI is not very comfortable.
okay, last two questions from the community. Chris asks if a module should own its own data. Is it reasonable for the module to define its own schema in a single relational database? I mean, not a module, but all the modules share the same physical database, but they have their own schema, or they have own set of tables accessing to them. I think it's reasonable, and it is default with the ABP's approach, because in the beginning of the solution, no need to have multiple physical database. If you respect your data boundaries and all modules only use their own schema, it will be very easy to separate these schemas to physical database later. So it's best to start with a single database, but isolated data base tables or schemas. Last question is, in which layer should the ETO models be used? If you are following the ABP's layered solution structure, it is the application contracts package. I completed the questions. I think
I can
maybe
I
Alper, maybe last one or two from your
okay,
questions.
last
Then
one.
we finalize.
Last one, and it's an interesting one. Milan Milanovic has an article about Stack Overflow architecture. Maybe you didn't know this topic before. Scott Hanselman make an interview with the head of engineering of Stack Overflow, and Stack Overflow handles 6,000 requests per second, 2 billion page views per month. They managed to render a page in 12 milliseconds. And we imagine maybe they are using microservices, which this level of application with cloud, Kubernetes. No, it's an 15 years old, a giant monolithic application running on premise. And it's single application on IaaS, which runs on 200 sites. Single app is running on 9 web servers and a single SQL server with the addition of one hot standby. So as you see, not always required microservices to handle very much data.
Yeah, we underestimate monolith applications. Monolith applications also can scale well. And most of the system doesn't need to that kind of scalability. Not billions of people will use it.
Also,
even millions of people using Stack Overflow, you see, and they can scale.
yes. Shopify It's one of the most known e-trade, e-commerce website. Shopify in Black Friday, they serve 27 million requests per second.
Per second.
And you probably think these requests can only be handled by fancy microservices, but the truth is different. Shopify uses modular monolith approach. So keeping all its code in one code base, but modularized, monolithic architecture is the easiest to understand and implement. So these are interesting examples. Also, levels architecture, who managed to scale to millions of users with only Google Sheets as a backend. So they are a carrier site for professionals, which has 2 million unique user visits every month. They wanted to move fast and focus on important things when they started. So they needed a backend. They used no code approach with Google Forms. It's very interesting. They are using backend for with Google Forms, Google Sheets. So I like these guys who are creating some smart ideas. This has also enabled them to save developer time, reduce complexity, and save infrastructure costs. So no need to go where everyone goes. You can find your own solution for your own specific requirements. You can read his article, Milan's article here. Are we tired?
I am fine, but it's best to finish.
Finish on taste. Okay.
Yeah, it's almost midnight for our guests.
Tomorrow, I think Omkar will not go early.
Yeah, no, this is absolutely amazing because these are the questions which we often experience when we interact with customers. So you made it easy for us. So thanks, Anil, for bringing on this community talk, and it was really pleasure interacting with you folks, especially on a topic where it's a starting point for picking up right, and well begin is half done. So if you start right, you are guaranteed with your application going up and running.
There are so many interesting comments from our viewers. I think we should compile all of them there. Each question
Yeah.
has a different context and very, very good too.
Yes, I think people who are interested in microservices and maybe architecture guys are here listening to us today because it's something like decisions we need to make a leader of the team. That's why niche team, maybe 5% of all developers who are interested in this kind of complex topic are with us tonight. That's why thanks
Correct.
also everyone who listened to us for 1 and 40 minutes.